I hate the Moor. I hate the Saracen. Salute, BookTube. Welcome to my channel. This is part 4 of my September Shorty September slash Shaketember videos, in which I combine two events that were occurring in September. Shorty September, which is reading a book, a short story book, defined typically as under 200 pages, and also Shaketember, in which you're encouraged to read Shakespeare in September. So I combined the two, reading the plays of Shakespeare this past month, and just this past week, although we're into October, um, I read this Othello by William Shakespeare. Um, what to say about this? Definitely saved the best for last. For those of you who are regulars on the channel, you'll probably know. You can check my previous videos. I read and discussed The Tempest, As You Like It, A Midsummer Night's Dream, and now we conclude the month with saving the best for last with Othello. The three I mentioned, The Midsummer Night's Dream, As You Like It, The Tempest, those are comedies, or if comedy is not the right word, they're feel-good stories that make you smile, you laugh at the end. This is a different beast altogether. This is definitely a tragedy. Actually, the official title, I think, of this work is uh, the tragedy of Othello, the Moor of Venice. So definitely not a feel-good story. Actually, a story that's very tragic, very sad, very melancholy, but very well done, very well written. Starts a bit slow. It takes you a bit of a while to understand what's going on, but then ends with a flourish, a real flourish. A lot of you are very bookish people. I'm sure many of you have read this. For me, this was the first time I had seen this in a play, but I was much younger. I was in America. I was in Washington D.C. and this was playing. Washington D.C. has a very prominent Shakespearean theater and library. I think it's called the Folger Library. Um, and I had the chance to go there, and Othello was playing, but I wasn't. I mean, I was very young, and I didn't follow the story in depth, and you can't really follow the story, despite Shakespeare writing these as plays and movies, and they've been made into movies a lot. I still think the best way to approach them is by reading them. You really get to understand the story and the beauty of Shakespeare's prose. Um, so Othello, again, just like the other books that I've been reading this month, The Tempest, Midsummer Night's Dream, As You Like It, there's a similar device that Shakespeare uses. The story starts somewhere, but then it's transported to somewhere else. And that's true as well here in Othello. The story starts in Venice, but then all the main characters are transported to the island of Cyprus, and it's in Cyprus where the story unfolds. So that's one thing that's similar to the other stories. But that's really where the similarities end. The rest of it, again, those are comedic and light-hearted stories. This is dark and brooding. It starts very merry, but then just, I guess, declines into a dark story, or transforms into a dark story quite quickly. It's, again, Shakespeare, very brisk. These are small, his works, if you read them individually, and these have the editions I'm reading in, these Penguin Popular Classic containing 100% recycled paper. Not the best editions, but they, if there's no notes and very small introductions, you can see how small a Shakespeare. You can read Shakespeare in a day. In a weekend, you can read 4 or 5 plays if you're really prolific reader, or if you really want to. Not impossible, definitely. Um, but yeah, so that the similarities is that the story moves into a sort of uh, new location, or in a certain location from the beginning. Um, But that's again where the similarities end, and this again turns into a tragedy. Just to give you a basic understanding of this play, Othello is a Moor. Now, what is a Moor? It's a derogatory term used by Europeans, white Christian Europeans, against anybody who was dark skinned or who was from the Middle East or who was Islamic, although not necessarily a lot of Moors converted. Um, I think Moors can be used also for Jewish people. I'm not sure though. Saracen is another derogatory term used by white Christian Europeans against Islamic or Muslim or Middle Eastern people. But here, Moor is used by Shakespeare. And but Othello is a Moor and he's a minority. Some argue that he was a, or he's supposed to be played by a black man in the plays, or a black person. Again, that one is also a bit controversial, but despite Othello's difference in terms of race, which is a big part of this play, Shakespeare on race, he starts the story as a very privileged person. He's at the upper ranks of the Venetian government, the Venetian state. He's a respected general who has the confidence of the Duke of Venice, the Doge of Venice, and he is commissioned to be the general, the leader in the fight against the Turks in Cyprus. So Othello starts the story at a very high position, a very comfortable position, a very privileged position. Added to that is his love. Added to the whole story of the invasion of Cyprus by the Turks, the Ottomans, is Othello's personal life, in which he has snagged or has, depends what word you want to use, seduced or won over the admiration and love of Desdemona. I always miss. Yeah, Desdemona. Also a very high ranked, apparently very virtuous, and very a very virtuous, very high-ranking woman of the Venetian upper class. So she falls in love with him. So Othello's in a very privileged position, a very high position in the state. So despite his Moorish background, and despite the many enemies he has, most notably Iago, but also Rodrigo. Despite that, he's got the confidence of the Venetian state. So Othello starts at a very high position. But as we see and as the story progresses, Othello's position slowly deteriorates until he's at the lowest of the low. He pretty much loses it. Again, due to scheming by a very evil, a villain, as the beginning of these plays has the actor name or the list of characters. So Iago is he's defined as a villain. Othello is a Moor. Cassio is a honorable lieutenant. Rodrigo is a gulled gentleman. Desdemona is the wife of Othello. Emilia is the wife of Iago, and Bianca is a courtesan, which is I guess a nice way of saying a prostitute. The word Shakespeare uses here is whore. The word whore comes up a lot here. We'll discuss about the. Actually, maybe now is a good time. I mean, I don't want to ruin the plot or ruin the ending or or spoil the story. So again, Othello starts very high, but then a series of events leads him to from being the top to descending to descend to fall from grace. The fear of anybody at the top. If you're at the top of your organization, or you're the CEO, or you're the captain, or you're the top person, there's only one way to go, and that's down. But anyway, that being aside, another big difference here in Othello that you will not find, or I didn't find in the other plays that I saw to an extent, is the strong women character here. two strong women characters. Desdemona is strong-ish, um, but it's the one that impressed me the most was Emilia. Emilia, wife of Iago, strong woman, um, a character just shows strong femininity, something we don't expect when the way Othello treats Desdemona or all the other male characters treat the female characters. There's one passage I haven't done any reading since I've done this series of books, but I think this passage, just to highlight the strong character nature of Emilia. This is her talking to Desdemona about what's going on in their relationships with their husbands. It says, uh, let husbands know their wives have sense like them. They see and smell and have their palates both for sweet and sour, as husbands have. What is it that they do when they change us for others? Is it sport? I think it is. And doth affection breed it? I think it doth. Is it frailty that thus errs? It is so too. And have not we affections, desires for sports, and frailties as men have? Let them use us well, else let them know. The ills we do, their ills instruct us so. Uh, Basically, what I don't know if I read that properly. Maybe my spacing and my I should have maybe practiced that before. I was just worried I skipped a line. Uh, but basically, I didn't read that too well. But just to maybe translate it into modern English, what just basically what Emilia is saying is that women, we also have our we face the same issues that men do. There's no difference really. We have our faults. They have their faults. We have our faults. They Is it frailty that does errs? It is so too. And we have not we affections, desires for sport. Is it just men who might be unfaithful or have passions? And then it says, but let them use us well, else let them know. The ills we do, their ills instruct us so. So it's also that men have to set an example. If men are going to be bad or evil, well then women are going to be as well. So again, so I think the neighbor is revving his motorcycle. Anyway, yeah, so again, I don't want to get too much into the story as much as I have given. I can talk a lot about Iago, about Rodrigo, um, about Cassio, the characters in here. But I don't want to just get too much into the story or get too much into the story and spoil anything. I think it's best, especially if you haven't read this, just to go into it, or if you have read it, to read it again, because you can read this again and again and again. It's really very impressive. The last thing I'll say just before I wrap this up, just as I was reading this, I got an email. There's an event at a university here where I'm at. For those who don't know, I'm in the heart of the Middle East, in the United Arab Emirates. There is a South African acting tour group that is coming this way, and they're actually going to be performing at one of the local universities here. And they're performing this Othello, and it's Othello. It's a South African reenactment or a South African version of the Othello play, of the Othello story. And I think I didn't read too much into the background, but you would think this has resonance in a place like South Africa, where you have there were strong racial tensions throughout its history, only really beginning to heal recently, although some might even argue, I don't know, I'm not an expert on South Africa, but argue that there still exists some racial tensions. But I mean, this story, the fact that Othello is a Moor, that he's referenced to being a black person, a black man, that most of the plays nowadays, movies, plays Othello is played by a black man. In South Africa, I think the South African version is going to have a black Othello, and then Iago is a white I don't know what they call the South Africans call it segregationist or apartheid. Iago plays a racist white South African. I believe that's the premise of that play, but I'll be checking it out. It's this Thursday. I think Thursday is the ninth or the 10th. I think the 9th of October. So I'll be watching that, and just by coincidence, it was about Othello, which I have been reading. So it's gonna be fresh in my mind. I'm gonna check out the play. I'm gonna tell you, recommend you definitely to read this. Um, the racial aspect, I didn't really talk about it much. It's a bit controversial. I don't want to get too into it, but you can't avoid it here. The racial aspect, you would think Othello was a hero. There's no way Shakespeare would have made Othello or the Moor the hero. He turns out, well, I don't want to spoil, but basically he's not the hero. God forbid there's a uh, person of Middle Eastern or Islamic extraction that turns out to be the hero. Now that can't happen, but it's still a great story. Something I definitely recommend, and definitely encourage everybody to read, or if you have read it, to reread it. And also let me know what you think in the comments if you have read it or if you haven't, and what you think, or whatever you want. Just comment below. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you for following me throughout September as I read these 4 Shakespeare titles. You can see the other videos in my back catalog for Shorty September and for Shaketember. This concludes it, but definitely I'm a new Shakespeare fanboy. Definitely going forward, maybe next September, maybe even before. I definitely want to read more Shakespeare, and you should too. So with that, Booktube, I'll wrap this up. Thank you so much. Salute.